Imagine being 14 years old, dressed in the kind of finery your family saved for years to buy. Your mother tucks a ring of fresh flowers into your hair, pretending her hands aren't shaking. Your father watches you the way a man watches a contract being signed. Your brother drums his fingers, impatient to finish unpleasant business. Everyone calls this a blessing. Everyone says this day belongs to the goddess. No one explains why the older women nearby refuse to meet your eyes. Before the sun sets, a stranger will decide what your body is worth. And this is still the merciful part. The temple gates gleam like gold in the afternoon light. The ziggurat rises above you like a ladder carved into the sky. Up close, it smells of incense, boiled barley and smoke. Priests move like shadows. Slaves lug heavy baskets of offerings. And somewhere inside, behind low perfume-soaked curtains, a ritual waits for you. A priest places a rope crown into your hands. Another writes your name on a clay tablet. On the altar, you notice a single silver coin resting as if waiting for someone. In a few minutes, you'll understand why your parents brought you here. In a few minutes, you'll understand why the temple doors lock from the inside. In a few minutes, you'll learn this ritual has nothing to do with devotion, and everything to do with ownership. This isn't myth. This was Babylon, a system so normalized that ancient writers described it without flinching, and so disturbing that modern historians still argue over whether the truth is too dark to accept. And by the time the first stranger approaches the girl beneath the ziggurat's shadow, you will understand the real purpose of Babylon's most sacred ritual, and why the world tried to forget it. If hidden horrors of the past fascinate you, subscribe to History Digger, hit the like button, and once you reach the moment that unsettles you most, tell me where you're watching from. Let's begin. Her name is Beltani, and this is where her story truly begins. Now picture yourself as Beltani, standing at the threshold of Ishtar's temple. There are other girls like you, some older, some younger. Some look composed, others look like they wish to melt into the tile. They hand you a thin cord, coiled and soft, braided from plant fiber. A crown for the holy, the woman beside you says. They place it around your head like a crown that tightens rather than glows. You smile because everyone else is smiling. You do what is expected. You are offered barley cakes and a cup of sweet beer. You bow. You learn the hymns, your voice small against the chant. Herodotus described it bluntly. Women seated, rope crowns pressed tight, men choosing as they passed. Scholars still argue whether he misunderstood, but the clay tablets don't argue. They list names, payments, silver, grain. They were written to count. Here's what no historian will tell you plainly. This is where the story stops looking sacred and starts looking transactional. Beltani learns the business quickly. First the training, music, dance, perfume, the ways of lowering a look so it becomes an invitation instead of a refusal. A woman named Iltani shows her how to roll a cosmetic stone over her face to bring a last sheen of oil. A boy with ink-stained fingers marks her name on a small clay tablet. Kadishtu, he murmurs, as if that word is both title and trap. The priests explain the theology in patient voices. To please Ishtar is to please the city. To please the city is to secure harvests, births and trade routes. The logic is tidy, the consequences are not. If you were Beltani, would you call this devotion or imprisonment? It is easy to call the Kadishtu priestesses. They are trained, they memorize hymns, they learn to read sacred forms pressed into clay. They wear clean linen, they stand inside holy walls. From the outside it looks like status. The law supports that illusion. Property, wages, legal standing on paper. But the tablets never record consent, and they never record exit. On paper, she belongs to no man. In life she belongs to the temple. For a brief moment, Beltani believed this might be her future, a path upward, a chance to rise like the priestesses, whose names were pressed into clay. Maybe the temple would protect her. Maybe she could even thrive here. But that hope died quickly. At night, when the lanterns ignite and Babylon sinks into a low humming quiet, The inner court changes. The outer doors are drawn shut, but men still enter. Merchants with covered faces, soldiers home from duty, travelers carrying silver, grain, or cloth from distant roads. They do not linger. They pay, and priests guide them behind low curtains, where the Kadishtu wait. Coins pass from hand to hand. Names are recorded. Portions are set aside for sacrifice. Everything else feeds the temple stores. This is where devotion becomes routine. Beltani watches an older woman leave the enclosure. She moves carefully, practiced, with a coin resting in her lap, and a gaze trained not to settle anywhere too long. No one shames her. No one mocks her. The city respects her for having served, and yet her life has already narrowed. She will not marry as other women do. She will not raise children inside a household that belongs to her. Her future has been shaped quietly, without a single spoken sentence. Some Kadishtu call this a position, others call it survival. Beltani calls it order. Her days are not chosen, they are assigned. Bells wake her, rations decide her meals. Names spoken by priests decide when she serves. No one threatens her, no one restrains her. Still nothing belongs to her, not even her time. A woman who cannot leave is not staying by choice. At night, lying on her narrow mat, Beltani thinks of the smell of wet barley, of her mother's hands smoothing her hair, the rope crown still resting lightly against her temples. She wonders how long perfume can hide exhaustion. The tablets offer no answer. They simply stop recording names. And then there is another ritual. Once a year during the New Year festival, the temple prepares a sacred marriage meant to secure the city's future. It is dressed in hymns and symbols, spoken of as union and blessing. Inside the walls it feels less like celebration and more like proof that the goddess's favor has been purchased again. The temple does not accept refusal. Beltani is still new enough to believe the goddess might be gentle. The hymns speak of gardens and rain, of love that nourishes the land, but the priests speak of service, and the men speak of payment. The purpose is never hidden. The city must be fed. The city must endure. As dusk settles, Beltani lifts the rope crown once more. The inner court doors close. Rugs are laid out. Records are straightened. Girls adjust their hair while chants rise. Old and insistent. Something shifts behind a curtain. The air tightens. One more name will be taken. One more entry added. One more night absorbed into memory. A priest murmurs words she barely hears. Incense fills her lungs. A coin waits somewhere beyond her sight. A narrow rope path marks the ground, guiding where she must sit. A man will choose. When the curtain trembles, Beltani understands that the choice was decided long before she arrived here. The fabric parts. It falls shut behind the stranger. The rope crown digs into her palms as she grips it, suddenly aware of its meaning. The priests call it sacred. The older Kadishtu know better. Once it touches your hair, the temple claims more of you than your family ever could. Footsteps cross the tiled floor. Sandals scrape clay. The man is not cruel. He is ordinary, following a custom older than either of them. He hesitates. Then the silver falls. It lands in Beltani's lap, with a sound too small for what it seals. The priest exhales. The scribe presses a mark into clay. The coin does not need to be large. It only needs to be given. And because it was given, it cannot be refused. Tradition says she must rise. And here, tradition is law. This moment is not the end. It is the entry point. Once the coin has fallen, nothing needs to be explained. The priest gestures forward. The stranger walks ahead. Beltani's knees shake, but her feet obey. The path has already been decided for her. The ritual chamber is narrow, its painted walls glowing softly under lamplight. Incense hangs thick in the air, sweet and suffocating. Small bells fixed to the doorway chime as she crosses the threshold, meant to summon the goddess, but sounding instead like a signal that another obligation has begun. No one speaks to her. No one explains what comes next. The silence is deliberate. This system does not rely on cruelty. It relies on age, repetition, and the confidence that no one will interrupt what has always been done. The ritual is older than the city's walls. It does not pause for doubt. It does not adjust for fear. Beltani steps inside. The curtain falls, and Babylon continues without her. In the months that follow, temple life settles into a rhythm that leaves no room for questions. Morning hymns, oil baths, lessons in music, scent and composure. Inside the walls, the Kadishtu are praised as sacred. Outside they are spoken of in lower voices. They move between reverence and use without ever fully belonging to either world. Some of the older women whisper when the priests are gone. Ishtar owns us, one mutters. Another shakes her head. The temple does. Ishtar only signs off. Beltani does not laugh. The temple is a city within a city. Storerooms stacked high with grain. Jars sealed with silver. Names pressed into clay and filed away. And the Kadishtu move through it all as essential and unnoticed as the machinery itself. The law recognizes them. It grants privileges. It lists protections. It does not grant departure. One night, Altani, the woman who trained her, sits beside Beltani on the terrace. Moonlight flattens the world into pale shapes. You understand it now, Altani says quietly. How this place works? Beltani nods. Do you still think we are priestesses? Beltani hesitates. What else would we be? Beltani smiles, but it is a tired expression worn smooth by years of answers that lead nowhere. Necessary, she says. Necessary to the temple. Necessary to men who come here and leave lighter. Necessary enough to keep. Never enough to release. A voice calls from below. Another offering has arrived. The rope crown waits on its hook. Duty resumes. As seasons turn, the temple becomes familiar in ways Beltani never wanted. She recognizes footsteps by sound alone. She knows which merchants bring wine, which soldiers bring impatience, which offerings carry the sharp smell of foreign roads. She knows the sound of coins striking clay bowls, and how quickly each one is counted, sealed and stored. An accountant once tells her she brings good fortune. She looks past him at the overflowing storerooms and understands what that praise truly means. What weighs on her most is not the ritual itself, which becomes numbing in its repetition, but the hours afterward, when the incense thins, the chants fade, and the city's noise returns beyond the walls. That is when the temple feels smallest. That is when the future disappears. No one here speaks of later years. Names are recorded. Then one day they are not. Older women vanish quietly. Their mats are folded. Their spaces filled. When Beltani asks where they go, Iltani touches her hair gently and says, "To the goddess." Her eyes do not agree. It is near harvest season, when a new marking appears on the temple calendar. The sacred marriage approaches, a ritual meant to bind the land's prosperity to divine favor. The public will see hymns, flowers, processions. Inside the temple, preparations are made with careful precision. The Kadishtu do not perform the rite, they prepare it, and for the first time, Beltani's name is called. A bowl of scented oil is placed in her hands. Her hair is arranged. The rope crown is adjusted. The air in the room feels heavier, as if the walls are listening. Even Eltani watches without speaking. "What must I do?" Beltani asks. The priest answers calmly, without urgency or threat. "What the goddess requires." The inner chamber is dim, lit by only a few lamps. Stone lions stare from the walls. Her platform stands at the center, draped in cloth, reserved for the highest rites of state and faith. Beltani's breath tightens. She has learned enough to recognize danger, even when it wears sacred language. Footsteps echo beyond the doorway. Someone important is approaching, and in that moment, Beltani understands that whatever lies beyond the next curtain will shape the rest of her life, not through violence, but through permanence. The chant begins. The lamps burn lower, the curtain stirs, and Beltani steps forward. She has prepared lamps before. She has prepared rooms. Tonight she is being prepared. The high priestess stands at the center of the chamber, draped in white linen edged with gold. She looks less like a woman than a symbol, composed, elevated, distant. Only the faint tremor in her hands betrays the truth. Even she feels the weight of this night. The altar is carved with lions, Ishtar's beasts, their stone jaws forever open. She tips the bowl. Oil spreads across the surface, dark and reflective, catching the lamplight like a held breath. Footsteps approach behind her, slow, deliberate. The man chosen to stand in for the divine enters the chamber. King or noble, it no longer matters. His presence shifts the room. Beltani keeps her eyes lowered just as she was taught, but she feels his gaze settle like weight on her skin. The priests circle them. The chant deepens. The chamber seems to close in, walls pressing closer than before. Then a voice speaks. Calm, certain, final. Tonight you serve the goddess in body and in symbol. The land depends on this. The city depends on this. A sentence so old it sounds unquestionable. A sentence that leaves no room for refusal. Beltani lowers her eyes, and the ritual begins. What happens next was never written down. The temple did not record details meant to be sealed. Only fragments survive. Hymns that speak of a prepared bed, of praising union and fertility. But everything in Beltani's life shifts after that night. The next morning, the high priestess embraces her, not with warmth, but with approval. Priests nod as they pass. A scribe adds a mark beside her name on a tablet she cannot read. Even Iltani looks at her differently now, with recognition edged by pity. You have seen the heart of the temple, Iltani whispers, and the temple has seen you. No explanation follows. None is needed. Once certain thresholds are crossed, there is no return. Then one day her name is no longer called. There is no dismissal, no ceremony, no farewell. Her entries on the tablets thin, then stop. This is how Kadishtu disappear, not through violence, not through scandal, but through quiet erasure. The records show small notations, duties fulfilled, offerings prepared, festivals served, then nothing. The temple has taken what it required, and it moves on. This is how countless lives ended inside Ishtar's walls. Not with drama, but with absence. Scholars argue, because argument is safer than conclusion. The tablets do not argue. They show a system that functions smoothly, efficiently, by consuming women without noise. Payments recorded, roles assigned, rituals regulated, bodies folded into law and ledger. Some women entered willingly, others were given by families, with no other options. A few gained status, most faded without trace. Beltani lived in the middle, shaped by a system that elevated her just enough to make her useful, then swallowed her whole. History does not preserve voices like hers. The temple recorded grain and silver, not fear, not hope, not regret, and yet the silence around her name speaks clearly. It tells us she was never meant to be remembered, only counted. It tells us why later generations tried to bury these rituals beneath metaphor and denial, not because they were small, but because they revealed too much. The temple is gone now, the ziggurat reduced to dust, the chants silenced, the lions broken beneath sand, but the questions remain. What did Beltani believe in the end? Did she still trust the goddess? Did she hope for escape? Or did she learn to stop hoping at all? History will never answer. The tablets do not record longing, they record transactions, and that is how Beltani remains, a name briefly pressed into clay, a life consumed by a system that called itself sacred, and a reminder that even the brightest temples can cast the darkest shadows. If you want to pay tribute to Beltani, and to the countless women history only counted, never remembered, leave her name in the comments. Thank you for watching this far on History Digger. If this hidden chapter unsettled you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment, which part hit you hardest? Your support helps us keep digging up these silent stories.